Only in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure can we go from a very intense situation where characters like Misa could easily die, we could lose one of our central boys, to then wrapping the episode up with a misunderstanding of one of the characters, looking at a situation that looks like some triple X naughty fun going on, and they just end it on the most ridiculous comedic gag possible. You go from life or death situation to basically characters thinking the others are pleasuring each other. Like, what? Only in JoJo, and I absolutely love it. This episode and this fight overall, this stand, was really good. And like how I was mentioning last week, it's hard to really pick a favorite fight in this part because they're all getting this attention and detail that I don't get to see in JoJo enough, where every stand, every character that stand's attached to, it feels like a lot of thoughts going in, as if this is the perfect JoJo part, taking all of the best aspects that makes this series what it is, but just using the great aspects and none of the mediocre aspects. This fight, like some of the best Grateful Dead, like, it's just amazing. It did something interesting, introducing a stand that can be wore by their user, which essentially changes the entire dynamic of stands, because now the stand user can be protected, and basically this dangerous ice stand that is freezing things, putting this cold atmosphere around them, isn't going to harm him because he's wearing the stand. Like, all these types of stands, and even when they share the same kind of format, their powers will always make them feel like they're a completely different stand, even if they are technically the same class. But actually introducing a new class to these stands, it's pretty cool. I have to say, like, just the idea of how often in this fight it was like a one-upping kind of match. Like, you look at Mista's stand, it is these bullets that can direct the actual bullets from his gun where to go, and it's exactly what I was anticipating, you know, him basically redirecting things on and on and on. But the idea of essentially one-upping yourself, like basically using the bullets to wedge a screw into his head, but of course that's not going to work, so he starts one-upping our characters. The idea of reflecting time and time again to the point that you're kind of using blood to splatter on his face. It's interesting how you can keep taking, you know, in a matter of minutes, it feels like this character has the upper hand, and then it will be a aha moment played right into my trap card. I love how brutal this fight was, because truthfully I thought Mista was going to die in this episode. He really had his back against the wall. When we got the backstory, I was really happy to kind of see the conclusion to how he joined Bruno's gang. I thought it was a really nice way to kind of tie into the theme of resolve, because he's buying into Giorno's resolve. He wants to basically prove himself, and he's willing to kill himself if it means getting this disc and succeeding in the mission. The mission is what's important, but you can also tell he didn't want to die in that moment. But it definitely felt tense. I mean, look at all the bullet holes. I mean, he got shot in the head, or at least almost got shot in the head. There were so many moments where I was like, is this really going to be finally a character in our main cast dying? And I know some people are going to say, well, Giorno has this ability. He can't heal, but he can fix things. He can turn an object into a finger. So like, if they lose limbs now, that's not really a penalty anymore, because Giorno, as long as Giorno survives the battle, he can use his stand to create body parts. He learned that in the prior fight, and as we can see, you know, with all the bullet holes, he can kind of fix his arteries by just changing bullets and other materials into what his body needs to survive. But like he also mentions, it's not going to stop the pain. And a lot of people, and I would say even myself, usually would agree that that is an overpowered stand, but I don't think it is, because in this part of JoJo, I feel like everyone technically has what you could consider an overpowered stand. Look at Grateful Dead. How the hell are you going to beat a stand that essentially ages you to the point that you're dying? No one thought that was possible. How are you going to stop this over-the-top baby tracker machine? Didn't think that was going to happen. How are you going to stop a stand that can, you know, freeze time like in past JoJo parts? Even when it feels like this is the most over-the-top and this is going to save them always, we haven't even reached the boss, and look at how many times these characters have almost died. Even though Giorno has an incredible stand and probably one of the best stands in the series up till now, he's not invincible, and he does need teams, and he needs the teamwork to keep the dream going, basically. So I do like how, even though he has this ridiculous power, in this fight 2v1 they did almost lose, because this stand, you could say, was overpowered. And that's why I think it's very important to reinforce this idea that even though I might say, even though you might say it, the idea of overpowered almost feels kind of useless to say, because all these characters are so ridiculous in strength. You should just say this is normal behavior for the JoJo world, and until you reach the true overpowered character of the series or the season, you can't really use that word, even though it kind of is like the first word we want to say when we see someone using ice in this way, or we're seeing, you know, someone freeze time or reattach a body part. That's like, you want to say it, but when you really think about the grand picture of JoJo, especially in this part, it's kind of the normality for this part, which I really like. I like how this part is supposed to just keep surprising the viewer, showing us ridiculous stands, ridiculous personalities, actually understanding the antagonist and who we're fighting on a deep enough level that they actually feel like a character, understanding their power system and all the little nooks and crannies that kind of make it work in the way that they do, really reinforcing that no one is safe in this part. And I like that. I love how, yes, I'm really glad that Giorno can reattach a hand after it gets frozen off in the middle of a battle, but in order for that to happen, he does need to win the battle first, because it does take some time, as we can see, you know, him kind of fixing up Mista, as painful as it looked for him, and also as sexual as it looked, depending on the perspective, it did take some time. So if someone got mowed down by a machine gun, you know, 100 bullets in them, it's not like Giorno could just stop mid-battle, fix him up, and say, hey, can you guys wait 5 minutes while I fix up my pal? No. They got to fight the person and then get to him first. So I do like how, even though there is this kind of like revive kit now in the party, it's not like it completely removes the threat, which I really, really appreciate. But the overall directing, especially like when it was doing the slow-mo, when we're seeing the bullets kind of zoom into this character, it's really cool how much attention to detail went into this fight, which, you know, all the fights have had this kind of attention, but there was a lot of really interesting styles used, especially for the art, to really get a sense this speed, this momentum, this violence and despair. There was a lot of blood, some very disturbing shots, especially when this character was getting literally impaled through that rod there. Like, there was a lot of brutality, but they somehow made it come across so beautiful all at the same time because of the poses and just the way the characters were kind of reacting. I can't tell you just the number of times where I was like, okay, he has to be dead this time. Of course, no, he's a JoJo villain, he can't be dead yet. Like, a lot of what this episode did of how, like, aha, I outplayed you, and then no, I outplayed you. It's kind of a tropey design in most series, but because JoJo went the route of detailing all these small details that most action series wouldn't go the route of doing, all the little nooks and crannies. I mean, most fights in most action series, you get maybe 1 or 2 kind of shocking moments and then the fight will wrap up. In this episode, there was like a dozen times where you're just like, this is it, this has to be the final moment, and then, oh no, they actually outplayed. The ricocheting bullets was actually, it's gonna hit him, but no, I was actually hoping you would hit me and I could use my blood to splatter you, or I'm gonna transform this into a vine, or I'm going to skate across, I'm gonna shoot you underwater. There was so many moments that it makes it feel like, even though there is so many ridiculous things happen and you look at it and you say only in JoJo, it still makes sense for the world of JoJo, which I think is really important to focus on, because yes, a lot of things in JoJo don't make sense if you apply normal physics and normal real world laws to it, but because we know how stand users work and how stands do make them into these crazy war machines, things actually make sense, especially with how they actually do detail these stands, including the antagonist stands of this part. I look at it and say, yes, if I try to apply real world logic, this makes absolutely no sense, but because this is a JoJo part, I'm like, no, this actually does make 100% sense. And basically what I've been told is that the people who thought that this part made no sense, it probably was because they read the bad translations before it actually got a proper translation group to back it, which, because up till now I've been really curious. I was like, why did so many people say this doesn't make sense? Because really I feel like I'm getting to understand Giorno's stand, how it kind of evolves, because he's learning from the antagonist stand. Like, that's the type of stuff you hope to see, and I don't think like you can even really call it overpowered or things don't make sense. It does, because this is how JoJo functions. It's how it's functioned from part 1, and it just kind of got crazier as it got going. But after learning how to develop certain, you know, villains like Kira in last part, and just how to make the stands really flourish, this part is taking all the best elements of JoJo and creating one of the best anime that I've seen, because it knows how to make action actually develop characters and make you invest in these characters, which typically when I'm like, oh, this character could die in an action scene, whatever, we got another 5 characters that we can focus on. I don't want any of these characters to die, and that's why I'm so invested, where I'm just like, Mista, I love your resolve, but I don't want to see you get shot because you could easily bleed out. Absolutely ridiculous. And I do like the whole idea of fate and predetermined destiny. So even when you do see certain things like, man, Mista got shot like 30 times, he got so lucky that that bullet didn't go in the wrong spot. But I do like the whole idea that JoJo is about this kind of predetermined destiny, and that certain things have to line up, so you can kind of put that in the back of your mind when you start thinking like, did he really get so lucky? Was this really just a way to keep him alive? But then you kind of think of the JoJo logic, and you're like, well, they did lay out this whole like path of destiny sort of situation, so you kind of buy into what's happening. It's kind of interesting though how last week it really felt like it was Giorno's time to shine in this fight, but then it shifted back to Mista. And Mista is such a great character, honestly. I love how his actor delivers these over-the-top lines. He almost comes across like he's having fun, in the middle of the worst situation possible, and because he gets to talk to his bullets, it's hilarious. I love the voice acting to these little guys. I love how they're always bickering and fighting, and how they'll be saying like, this is impossible, let's abort, and Mista will basically want to be punishing his kids, being like, stop being idiots, we gotta kill this guy. It's absolutely amazing, and I love how it's kind of silly to think about, but Giorno's just kind of chilling on the car over the past 5 minutes that this fight was going on, and he's just saying like, Mista, you're an idiot, you gotta stop doing this, get the thing and run. But Mista's so determined, and he's realizing that his determination might actually bite him in the ass. I love how there's so many little things that you can focus on in this episode that you kind of think to yourself, that's a little silly and ridiculous, but it also feels so perfect for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The voice acting was incredible, the sound effect design was amazing. I especially love the sound effect design for this fight because it is ice. You get to hear a lot of interesting sounds that you don't really get to hear in most fights. Like, sure, when Mista's firing his bullets, you're always going to hear ricocheting or the impact from the bullet, but because there was so many things at play, like the air kind of freezing around them or these ice shards, there was a lot of interesting sound effects that really helped me buy into what was happening, and it made you feel chilly alongside these characters. But the voice acting, Mista, star of the show, but I do think Giorno's kind of final speech before he just went impaling the poor fella, even though he was the villain, I felt kind of bad with how bad he died because of Giorno's rage. It was nice to see that just absolute menacing rage, and just Mista being like, even though Bruno's my capo, I kind of view this guy as him because of what he does, even though he's the newbie. I love how he just has that Dio charm, because people, even if they don't realize why they are so drawn into this guy and his resolve, you believe he can absolutely do it, which, granted, who his parents are, you kind of understand where that came from. Absolutely incredible episode. I don't think this would be my favorite fight, but I don't think I can pick a favorite fight, because the past few have really been one for one. Incredible directing, incredible power system, and just really putting the characters against a wall and making you feel like, well, we might be losing one of Best Boys right now, and that's all I hope for in a JoJo part. Keep making the ridiculous power system, keep making the ridiculous situations, the poses, the over-the-top reactions, but actually making me think, even if I think these characters are safe, they truly never are, especially if this is what they've been facing and they haven't even reached the boss or the head of this gang up till now. They've had one hectic day, to say the least. I mean, these characters just fight after fight after fight, and that turtle, I'm telling you, that turtle has seen some shit, and if he lives to the end of this part, I just wonder what his mind would be thinking, you know? What this turtle would view after what the hell has happened to him. That turtle is probably the MVP of this JoJo part up till now, but let me know whatever you thought, because I wasn't sure about this fight, if this was a very anticipated fight or not, but I was told last week that this was actually one of the most anticipated fights for this part. So for manga readers, did this live up to your expectations? Was this exactly how you thought it would be animated and directed? Was it a bit of a letdown? Whatever you're feeling, let me know. And for anime originals like myself, what did you think? Are you on my side that just this overpowered nature you can't even really call overpowered because it actually makes sense and everyone technically is kind of outclassing the other? Whatever you're feeling, let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.